Hi, everyone, and welcome to our virtual health event with UC Health. My name is Hannah Schrepfer, and I'm the Senior Event Coordinator here with the Highlands Ranch Community Association. We are so excited that you took some time out of your busy evenings tonight to discuss Nutrition 101. We are grateful for UC Health Highlands Ranch Hospital as a community partner and happy to host this wonderful event with their assistance. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. We are recording the webinar this evening and we'll be sending that via email by the end of the week. During the webinar, your microphones will be muted. To ask questions, please type them into the Q&A chat box located either on the top or most likely the bottom of your screen. We will save the questions for the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. Our presenters this evening are two registered dietitians from UC Health. We have Renee Walker and Amber Lamdin. And now, without further ado, I'll pass the time off to Renee.
Hello, everyone. My name is Renee Walker. I'm a dietitian, as she mentioned, at UC Health Highlands Ranch Hospital, and we're so excited to present this material to you. It looks like my screen sharing is not working here. There we go. All right. So Nutrition 101. This is a pertinent quote for us. Let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food, by Hippocrates. Throughout history, nutrition has been used as a form of medicine, not just for health and growth, but also for disease prevention. But our goal in this presentation is to sort of demystify nutrition, because there's so much information out there about nutrition, especially on things like social media and the news, and it's really often not as complicated as people make it out to be. So we're hoping to simplify that for everyone. So our objectives, we'll first start by talking about the difference between what a registered dietitian is versus a nutritionist. Learn about a healthy, balanced eating based on the USDA's MyPlate recommendations, including specific recommendations for each food group. Learn how to read and understand a food and nutrition label. Learn about proper serving sizes of food. The importance of variety in your diet for optimal health. Also learning about added sugar in foods and why you should reduce added sugar in your food. Also learn about the importance of adequate hydration. A few disclaimers. This presentation is really based on recommendations for the average adult, not really intended to focus on any sort of specific disease or other health conditions. So our recommendations for the purposes of this presentation are going to be based on an average healthy adult. So we would recommend, if you have specific health conditions, on medications, that sort of thing, that you would discuss that with your doctor before making dietary changes. So we'll start by talking about the difference between a dietitian versus a nutritionist. So a dietitian needs to have a 4 years bachelor degree in science at a minimum. Also have at least 1,200 supervised practice hours, a dietetic internship. We're required to pass a national registered dietitian exam. And also we are required to do continuing education, a certain amount of continuing education every 5 years in order to be recertified. A nutritionist, there's no specific education requirements. The title can, it can be obtained from any sort of online nutrition course. Some people just simply self-designate themselves as nutritionists. There's no supervised practice required. There's no regulation, and there's no continuing education. So pretty much anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. There are specific depending on the state that you live in. Colorado does not require licensure, but some states do require licensure, so not everyone can call themselves a nutritionist in some other states. So this is the, many of you have probably been familiar with the food pyramid, which was the previous standard for sort of recommendations on food servings and that sort of thing. The most recent recommendation is called My Plate, and it's the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it's really intended to be a simplified way to manage your diet, to manage your portion size. It's a visual representation to sort of encourage you to incorporate all the food groups into your diet in manageable and proper portion sizes. The main 5 food groups, fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. A few of the key highlights are trying to make half of your plate. So if you're visualizing the plate you're eating from, trying to make half of that comprised of fruits and vegetables. Trying to make, if you're, when you're consuming whole grains, to try to make half of those be comprised of whole grains. Incorporate animal and plant-based proteins in your meals. And when choosing dairy products, to try to focus more on low-fat or fat-free options. And we'll go over details on all of those in just a minute. But I wanted to recommend that you go to their website, myplate.gov. There's lots of resources there, including recipes. You can actually type in, your age, and it'll give information on what the recommendations are for your specific dietary needs. So it can be pretty much customized for you. And there's also an app that you can download that goes with it if you're interested in that. But we'll start with fruits. If you were looking at the plate, it would be recommended that approximately a quarter of your plate would be comprised of fruits, or 1.5 to 2 cups per day is the recommendation. Fruits in general are really important in your diet. They contain many different vitamins and minerals, especially things like vitamin C. That's really important for tissue repair, for healing, for immunity, and it can help with, healing wounds, that sort of thing. Fruits and vegetables obviously contain a lot of fiber, which is important for not only managing cholesterol levels, but also for an overall healthy bowel function, preventing constipation, that sort of thing. It's important to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables. I think sometimes we get stuck eating the same ones all the time, but it really is important to eat a variety because they all contain different vitamins and minerals. Also trying to consume the peels of, when there's an edible peel of a fruit is important too. Those things like apples, pears, peaches, those sorts of things. The peels contain a lot of different nutrients, including fiber as well. So it's important to consume those when you can, unless you're on sort of a low fiber diet for any particular reason. Also trying to focus on fresh or frozen fruits when possible. Because canned fruit tends to have a lot of added sugar to it. And then we get to vegetables. So vegetables is essentially another quarter of the plate if you were looking at the My Plate diagram. And that would be a recommendation of 2.5 to 3.5 cups per day. I should mention that these recommendations are all based on a 2,000 calorie diet, which is sort of the standard that these, nutrition labels, that sort of thing, is based on a 2,000 calorie diet, which is what they've calculated to be sort of the average for the adult male or female. But obviously, depending on your size, these are going to be a little bit different. So that's why we kind of put a range in there. But 2.5 to 3 cups a day is a goal. They contain lots of important vitamins and minerals. things like potassium, folate, vitamin A, vitamin C, dark leafy greens in particular, such as things like kale, spinach, those sorts of things also contain iron and calcium, which is important. They also contain a lot of fiber for cholesterol and healthy bowel function. Eating a variety of them is very important because, again, like the fruits, they all contain different vitamins and minerals depending on the vegetable. Also trying to focus again on fresh or frozen. And a lot of people question why frozen would be, okay to consume versus fresh. But when they harvest the fruits and vegetables, they harvest them at the peak of freshness. So then they, flash freeze them after that. So they're in a better state of nutritional value, fresh or frozen. So either one works. Another benefit to consuming frozen fruits and vegetables is that they are not going to go bad in the fridge. I think a lot of people don't often maybe buy fresh fruits and vegetables because they're afraid they're going to go bad too fast. So frozen is a good option for that. Be careful about canned vegetables. They can have a lot of added sodium in them, and also some additional preservatives, that sort of thing. So be careful about that. Grains. So I think there's a perception out there that carbs are evil. Carbs are not evil. They are necessary in your diet. It does mean you have to consume a lot of carbohydrates, but they are important to your diet, and we'll explain why here in a second. But it's recommended you have 6 to 10 ounce equivalents per day. So what that means is an ounce equivalent is equal to, say, a mini bagel, 1 slice of bread, also equivalent to a half a cup of cooked cereal, half a cup of pasta or rice, like a half an English muffin, 5 to 7 crackers, or 1 cup of, say, dry cereal. So those are, each of those things is 1 ounce equivalent. The main thing about grains in particular, they have a lot of important B vitamins, which you don't necessarily get a lot of in other parts of your diet. Things like thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, really important for a healthy nervous system, and just your overall metabolism in general. B vitamins are really, really important. So it's good to incorporate some carbohydrates in your diet. They also contain magnesium, important for healthy bones, muscles, nerves, again, selenium, which is important for immunity and also for male fertility in particular. It also contains fiber, again, helps manage healthy cholesterol levels, and also healthy bowel function as well. And the more whole grain the fiber, the grain is, the more fiber it contains. And also whole grains are less refined in general, and contain additional protein. So it's important to try to consume more things like whole wheat versus just white bread. Opting for things like brown rice instead of white rice. Those sort of changes in your diet can really help you to get more protein in your diet, more vitamins, minerals, that sort of thing. Because of the processed grains are going to have less of those nutrients in them. But protein and the whole grains can also help manage your blood glucose levels better. You'll digest them a little bit more slowly, so that's going to be better for your blood sugar levels. Trying to make half of your intake of whole grains be whole grain is a good goal to have. So the next would be protein. Again, it's comprised of about a quarter of that visual my plate diagram. Again, we're talking in ounce equivalents per day, so 5 to 7 of those per day. An ounce equivalent in this case is 1 ounce of meat poultry or fish. In a minute here, we'll talk about portion size so we can put that into a little bit more context. But a quarter cup of cooked beans is considered an ounce equivalent, as well as 1 egg or 1 tablespoon of peanut butter or a half an ounce of nuts or seeds. They also contain a lot of important B vitamins for building tissue, for blood cells. It contains iron, which can help prevent anemia, which is important for just transporting oxygen through your blood and tissues. It has magnesium for bone and muscle health, zinc for immunity. If you're eating seafood as your protein, a lot of seafood has omega fatty acids, which is really important for your brain health, but also can may help reduce your risk of overall heart disease. Vegetarian proteins, it's good to sort of incorporate animal proteins and vegetarian proteins in your diet. Vegetarian proteins include beans, nuts, seeds, soy, tofu, that sort of thing. Also, eggs are really important. I think eggs sort of have this reputation that, you know, they have a lot of cholesterol and they're terrible for you, but they have a lot of important nutrients that are important for good health. So choline, they have vitamin D, lots of good protein. They do have some cholesterol, but if you're not consuming, you know, a bunch of eggs all at one time, you're probably okay, unless you have cardiovascular disease, and then you may need to reduce that a little bit. You can also do egg whites as an option in that case as well. It's just the yolk of the egg essentially that's going to have the cholesterol in it. So that's an option. But eggs overall are a good source of protein, although I know that the cost of eggs has gone up significantly recently. So people may be buying a little bit less of eggs than they used to. Beans, peas, lentils are another vegetarian option. They include a good amount of soluble fiber, which is important in your diet. Soluble fiber in particular is really helpful with managing cholesterol. It can kind of help whisk cholesterol away. So it's a good thing to incorporate into your diet. And then dairy. So a lot of the population around the world is lactose intolerant. So this is going to kind of include fortified beverages and dairy products, fortified dairy alternatives. So the recommendation is that you would have 3 cups per day. And that can be anything from milk, yogurt, cheese, or lactose-free milk. Lactose-free milk has the same nutritional value as milk does. It just does not have lactose. It was just removed from the product. So it's still going to have protein. It's still going to have the vitamins and minerals. It's just not going to have the lactose in it. And then there's also the fortified milk and dairy alternatives. So things like almond milk or soy milk, coconut milk, almond, oat milk, all those sorts of things are sort of considered dairy or milk alternatives. And some of those, you just have to be really careful and read the nutrition labels on those, because some don't have much nutritional value at all. So it's important to try to find some that have adequate calcium and protein and vitamin D and that sort of thing. And that will be listed on the nutrition labels on those. But in general, dairy does contain calcium and phosphorus, which is really important for your bones. Vitamin D, again, important for bone health, but also really important for immunity. And most dairy products, well, I think pretty much all dairy products are going to be fortified with vitamin D. It's going to have it added. But it also contains a lot of other important vitamins and minerals. Vitamins A, B12, riboflavin, potassium, zinc, choline, magnesium, selenium, all kinds of vitamins and minerals that are really critical for good health, you can find in milk. So it's an easy option to sort of get a lot of nutrients. Also, it's a good source of protein, but be careful if you're doing milk alternatives. Some of them do not have a lot of additional vitamins and minerals or protein in them. So be sure to read the nutrition labels on that. We'll discuss the details of label reading here shortly. Again, if you're lactose intolerant, choose lactose-free products or fortified dairy alternatives. There's even a lot of orange juices out there that have added calcium or vitamin D. So that's an option too, if you're just not getting it much from your diet from other sources. Choosing low-fat or fat-free options is an overall good idea to reduce your intake of saturated fat, just for overall cardiovascular health primarily. And also, there's less calories if you're looking to have any sort of weight loss, to sort of decrease that amount of saturated fat in your diet. All right, so portion size. We really like to focus on discussing this because I think a lot of people don't really know what proper portion sizes of foods are. You may have all the good intentions of the world of having a healthy diet, possibly trying to lose weight, but portion sizes can be your enemies if you're overdoing it on portion sizes. So portion sizes have grown dramatically over the past 20 years, according to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. It's important to read nutrition labels. So many foods you may think are a single portion, when in reality, it's really intended to be, 2 to 3 portions, serving sizes in a package. So check the nutrition labels. A couple of their quick tips are, while eating out, splitting meals with others, boxing up half of it in advance and bringing it home for leftovers for the next day. A great tip when snacking in particular to sort of help keep portions under control is to portion out your snacks before you eat them instead of eating out of the bag. Just pour a small single serving into a bowl, consuming it that way. That can really help from overdoing it. Sometimes if you're just sitting watching TV or something while you're snacking, before you know it, you've eaten a whole bag of chips. So pre-portioning them in advance can be helpful to avoid that. Also, just learning about proper portion sizes and what an appropriate amount is important. For example, a 3-ounce serving of meat is about the size of a deck of cards. So sort of associating those visuals with what a serving size can be helpful to you. And this image here just sort of shows what serving sizes used to be versus what they are now. And if any of you have gone to a restaurant recently, you know that there's typically sometimes even double of what an actual healthy serving size of a meal would be. In America in particular, we tend to have much bigger portion sizes than other countries do. So to sort of give you a visual example of ways to help you manage serving sizes. So for example, the tip of your thumb, it is approximately a teaspoon. So this is based on, an average size hand. So if you have very large hands, very small hands, this is gonna be a little bit different for you. But in general, tip of the thumb, about a teaspoon. So you'd want that to be a proper portion size or serving size for, say, a sweetener or, a butter. say butter on your bread or something like that. So you wouldn't want it to exceed that. Your whole thumb as a measurement is approximately about a tablespoon size-wise. So an appropriate serving size of cheese is about that much. So I think a lot of us think that it's probably much more than that, but calorie wise, serving size wise, it's about a tablespoon. Also things like salad dressing, that would be about a serving size of salad dressing, and also something like peanut butter. The palm of your hand, as you can see on that square there, that's about 3 ounces. So that's about an appropriate serving size for something like red meat or fish, chicken, tofu, that sort of thing. And then if you make a fist with your hands, about a fist is approximately a cup's worth. So, you know, a serving size of milk would be a cup. A serving size of cereal would be a cup. So that would be sort of a good visual measurement for if you were planning to have one of those foods. Also, if you sort of visualize half of that, that's obviously half a cup. That is the appropriate serving size for things like grains, beans. So like, you know, rice, cooked rice, a half a cup is an appropriate serving size. So I think we're used to those being a lot bigger. In our head, we think that a serving size is a lot bigger, but those are the appropriate serving size. And that's what the nutrition labels are going to be based off, is a proper serving size based on that. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I'll kick it over to Amber.
All right. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay, but now we are going to dive kind of into reading the nutrition facts labels that are found on a lot of foods. So it can be kind of intimidating when you first look at the label. There's a lot of information, but it can be really helpful to just kind of know what you're looking for. And that will kind of be different, a little bit different for everybody. I'll discuss that in a little bit more detail, but the first thing, and really the most important thing on the nutrition label, is the serving size, in addition to the servings per container. So like Renee said, you know, if you're eating like a small bag of chips, or maybe you have like a 20-ounce soda or something, you might think that that is, you know, appropriate to consume all at once, when really it wasn't intended that way. And it's more like 2 or 3 servings in that small container. So the serving size tells you an appropriate serving to eat at one time, and then all the information below that is based on that amount of food. So for example, this label has the serving size is 1 cup, which has 280 calories. So the big question to ask yourself is, well, how much of this am I really going to eat? We generally do eat more than the serving size. So then you have to crunch some numbers and do a little bit of math. So, you know, if I were to sit here and say, I'm going to eat 2 cups of this, I have to know that I'd be getting 560 calories as opposed to 280. And that's true for all the other information as well. So like I said, it can kind of be personal based on your nutrition goals, but common things to be aware of is, of course, calories. This will contribute to weight gain or weight loss. Most people are aiming for that about 2,000 calorie a day mark, give or take, depending on activity, disease state, other things. Total fat and saturated fat particularly can be important for if you have like a history or a family history of heart disease. You kind of want to limit the saturated fat in particular. Trans fats are not actually recognized as safe, so we really don't want to see trans fats on the nutrition label at all. It's something to avoid when possible. Sodium is another really common one to look at. Unfortunately, sodium is packed into things that you really wouldn't think have sodium, like normal bread. We don't think of this as a salty item, but it does have probably more sodium than you would think. So that can be important, again, for things like heart disease, especially if you have like high blood pressure, any heart problems, things like that. And then added sugar, Renee mentioned a little bit, but that's super important if you have like a family history of diabetes or pre-diabetes. The added sugar is always listed under the total sugar. I'll talk a little bit more about the difference between natural sugars and added sugars, but the added sugars is what we really want to pay attention to kind of on the nutrition label typically. On the right here, it kind of talks about the percentage of daily values, which I think is another point of confusion on the nutrition label. But especially for those things that we're trying to limit, like saturated fat, sodium, and added sugars, we want that number obviously to be lower. So 5 or less is considered low, whereas anything that has, 20% or more is you're kind of getting up there for one serving or for one food item that you're going to eat during the day. So that's going to take a big portion of that amount that you want to limit during the day. And then below kind of those macronutrient lists, there's usually the micronutrients and the vitamins and minerals and stuff like this. It kind of depends on the item. It won't always be, on this label, it has vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. You're not always going to find all of those. It might be different on different nutrition labels. So those kind of vary. This is just diving a little bit more into what's considered, an appropriate daily value. That's what the DV stands for. And again, this is all based on an average 2,000 calorie diet. So there's certain goals that we want to meet for like those micronutrients. And that's where the goal over here says, at least for fiber, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. And then, the things that we're kind of looking for specifically, typically on the nutrition label, are the things that we want, to be under, which would be saturated fat, sodium, and the added sugars. So this is kind of just a good resource to have to know what you should be aiming for, what you should kind of be limiting, what's in your pantry, what are things that you typically buy, and what do those nutrition labels look like. I think that's something that we're not all as familiar with as we could be. This is something I really like to talk about. I don't think anybody really, myself included, gets enough variety in their diet. So for a second, I think it might be helpful just for everybody to think about something that you might eat for breakfast on any given day of the week, maybe especially during the week. And then think about how many times per week do you eat that exact same thing. So using myself as an example, I work full-time at the hospital. I need a quick, easy breakfast. I want it to be healthy. So Renee can probably attest to this. I eat oatmeal like 5 days a week sometimes. And while, that's good, it has fiber, it's a healthy breakfast. I could probably use some more variety and switch that up with something else sometimes. So I think we all do this. We all eat the same things very frequently, just purely out of convenience. So some ways to add some more variety in your diet can just be, like the picture shows, is to make your diet as colorful as possible. Renee already, mentioned that different fruits and vegetables, particularly, they're different colors, and all those different colors have different nutrients. So, green vegetables and fruits contain chlorophyll, and orange fruits and vegetables contain beta carotene, and there's all these different antioxidants and micronutrients that are in all the different colors. So the more color you can get, the better. And these all those vitamins and minerals and things have an equally important role in optimal nutrition status. So we really want to try to do that. You can also, try to shop seasonally. buying fresh produce when it's in season. It's often, on sale or it's cheaper and it's usually more fresh. With that, there's, we have a pretty short growing season here in Colorado, but we do grow quite a bit of produce here. We're known for really good cantaloupe and Palisade peaches in the summer. We also grow winter squash, among other things. But again, a lot of times these are on sale. They're really fresh. They're grown locally. It's good for the environment. You're getting more variety that way. So that's a really good way to kind of get more variety. Obviously, we have so many farmers markets here in the summer that I know everybody loves. So that's kind of another way to shop locally. The grocery stores often have, they'll mark on the tag, like this is grown in Colorado. And I always think that's kind of cool to look for. So, and then again, just kind of buying what's on sale can help save money. And then, you can pick up a new ingredient and find a recipe and kind of work with some unfamiliar ingredients, see if you like them and get some more variety that way. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about added sugar. So some foods, especially fruits, contain natural sugar. Also starchy vegetables like potatoes and squashes and stuff like that are going to contain more natural sugar. These foods also have fiber, which Renee talked a lot about, but fiber, really helps slow the absorption of those sugars. And so in general, natural sugar is really not a problem for the general, like average healthy person. The issue becomes when we're eating a lot of processed foods that contain a lot of added sugars, and these are absorbed a lot faster and can result in really high blood sugar spikes. And we've all, had that, especially just coming off of the holidays. I'm sure we've all, eaten too many cookies and you get that like sugar rush and then you're hungry 20 minutes later and then you're tired and it's like, it's all that just like added sugar. So this can contribute to weight gain. Like I said, you're usually more hungry after eating a bunch of added sugar. You're not satiated as long, so you're more likely to feel hungry sooner. And it can put you at risk for heart disease and, of course, type 2 diabetes. So according to the CDC, the main sources of added sugar, of course, are sugar-sweetened beverages, sweet snacks, and desserts. So the dietary guidelines for America recommend that added sugars should be less than 10% of your total calories. So for that average 2,000 calorie diet, you want about less than 200 of those calories to be from added sugar, which would be equivalent to less than 50 grams of added sugar in a day. And that gram equivalent is what you're going to find on the nutrition label that we talked about a few slides back. So this picture I really liked because it shows, common beverages. Obviously here, the orange juice and the naked smoothie drink, those contain, parts of whole fruit. So there's going to be some natural sugar in there, and that'll show on the label under total sugar. But those often also have, some portion of added sugar. Whereas the Red Bull, the Coke, and the Mountain Dew, those are going to be like 100% added sugar. There's no natural sugar in those. And so, the Mountain Dew one, for example, with the most sugar, when you equate it to actual sugar cubes, it gives it a different kind of feel. You don't feel like that when you're drinking it, but you wouldn't just sit down and, munch down some sugar cubes. So I think it's a really good visual. We've probably, all seen something like this before, but I think it's a good reminder. And finally, we just wanted to talk about nutrition. Hydration. Our bodies are made up of 50 to 60% water, and really every process in your body requires adequate hydration. So we all know the dangers of dehydration. We're probably not all as hydrated as we could be, but it's super important for maintaining our blood pressure, for, saliva production, for keeping our skin nice and healthy. especially here in Colorado where it's so dry and impossible to have moisturized skin ever. It plays a huge role in digestion, maintaining just a normal body temperature, waste removal, and of course, electrolyte balance and a million other things. But if you're asking yourself, how much water should I really drink? The recommendations really vary based on so many things: sex, age, of course, activity level. If you're, spending a lot of time like hiking or working out or whatever, you're going to need more, and a lot of other factors. But in general, we would want the average healthy adult to aim for 6 to 8-ounce cups. Or what I like to tell people is to aim for like half of your body weight in fluid ounces. So if you weigh, say, 160 pounds, you would want to try to drink about 80 ounces of fluids each day. This doesn't, of course, all the fluids you drink count towards your hydration. Coffee and tea and things like that are, diuretics, so they're going to make you kind of go more. But those do still count towards your fluid intake. Obviously, we want to avoid the super sugar sweetened beverages, but all those things, and even the water content of foods would kind of count towards that too. And of course, we want to reiterate that you don't want to be consuming too much water. That can really mess up your electrolyte imbalance and also be very dangerous. So of course we want to be aware of that. And then of course we've all know that, the color of your urine can kind of help indicate where you're at. I think this is something we probably don't pay enough attention to, but if you, are just a little bit more aware, you can kind of get a gauge that way. And these are just start references.
All right.
Great. Thank you so much, Renee and Amber. We're going to go ahead now and take some questions. So just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the Q&A box in your control panel. And it looks like we do have a few questions. So the first question I have for you two is, how important is vitamin D? Should we be taking supplements?
It depends. I would say if it depends on if you're getting enough from other food sources. So if you're consuming, say, the recommended 3 cups of milk a day, you're probably on the right track in combination with your diet. But if you're not consuming dairy products, it's also in a lot of other foods, but the main source is typically dairy products for vitamin D. And it also depends on if you have any health conditions as well. So you would want to, if you have things like kidney disease, that sort of thing, it just changes how much vitamin D you might need. If you're out in the sunshine a lot, you can get vitamin D from that. But in the winter here, obviously, we're not getting a lot of vitamin D. So it depends. It depends on how much you're consuming in your diet. But some people do probably need a supplement. And there's lots of supplements out there that have calcium and vitamin D. But if you're drinking adequate milk, I would say you may not necessarily need it. Amber, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. My general rule, like Renee said, depending on health conditions or anything like that, but I generally tell people like a multivitamin can't hurt. I shy people away from, I talk to a lot of people that are taking, 5, 10, like handfuls, of different supplements. That's just not necessary. It's expensive. We don't really know how these are regulated. We don't know how they're absorbed in our body. I really shy people away from that. But I think if, you're taking like a multivitamin or a vitamin D supplement or something, then, and you prefer to do that, maybe like a probiotic or something, then have at it, is what I generally say.
Great, thank you. And just to add to that, do you guys have any recommended supplements for probiotics?
Probiotic, I mean, there's so many things out there. So vitamins and minerals, vitamin supplements in general are not regulated. So there's not ever any guarantee that what is on the label is actually what's in the bottle. I think a lot of people don't know that. It's not regulated like medications are. So it's hard to know what's trustworthy or not. The only thing I can recommend is things that I've recommended at hospitals I've worked at. Culturelle is one that I've used myself, and I know that a previous hospital I worked at used pretty frequently. So that would be the only one I would feel comfortable recommending.
Yeah, I don't have any specific like brand. I'm not well versed in, opposing brands or anything like that, so I wouldn't want to say something incorrect.
All right, great. Thank you both. And our next question, what is your take on protein shakes and bars? How beneficial and healthy are they?
It depends. It depends on why you're consuming them. If you're just consuming them in addition to a regular healthy diet and you're generally healthy, you may not necessarily need them. They can be pretty high in calories overall sometimes. Sometimes they're high in sugar. It's really, again, about label reading and checking the labels on those. So, in the hospital, typically people are sick. Sometimes they're really struggling with weight loss, have a really poor appetite. In that case, we do typically recommend things like that, especially when you're ill, because adequate nutrition is super important in that case. But for the general average person, it isn't necessarily needed.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Great, thank you. And next question, similar to that, is my protein powder considered a whole food?
I'm going to say no, just because again, we don't really know what's in it. I mean, it has protein and all that stuff, but I think to me, like a whole food is something that's not processed, right? And a protein powder is highly processed.
Great, thank you both. It looks like we answered all of our questions tonight. So friendly reminder, this webinar has been recorded and we will be sending it out via email by the end of the week. Thank you again to UC Health and to Renee and Amber for this amazing presentation on nutrition. And thank you to all of those who joined us tonight. Our next virtual health event will be on Wednesday, February 8th on women's health, and details for that is coming soon. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night, and thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.